Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Edible Education at Lord Roberts Lessons from a Food Literacy Learning Process webinar. Before going further, I want to acknowledge I am broadcasting from the unceded and ancestral territories of Coast Salish people of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nation. As a new settler, I feel grateful to live in these beautiful lands. I also want to acknowledge the main partners in this webinar, Public Health Association of BC and Sustain Ontario. This is the first Farm to Cafeteria Canada webinar of the year. It has been brought together as an activity of Farm to School Canada Digs In, which is a 3-year national initiative building on Farm to Cafeteria Canada's strong and diverse national network to scale up efforts to get healthy local foods into the minds and onto the plates of students across Canada. My name is Claudia Paez, and I am a Farm to Cafeteria Canada Regional Lead for British Columbia, mainland, and Vancouver Island. I will facilitate this webinar today, while Caroline Webb, Regional Lead for Ontario, will provide the webinar technical support. Thanks for that, Caroline. This webinar has been opened up for everybody, and it will be recorded and made public after the webinar ends. Once it's over, we'll post it online and send you a link. Today, we'll hear from Brent Mansfield about the Edible Education Project at Lord Roberts Elementary School in Vancouver. But before we go to Brent, I guide you through a few housekeeping items. First, just to make sure that you can hear me, can you find the little hand that you can see circled at and click it? Please do it now. The panel, you will find the panel on the right hand. And I don't see anybody.
Claudia, I see some hands going up, so I think we're good.
Yeah, okay, good, because I couldn't hear. Okay, thank you, Caroline, for confirming that. Secondly, if you have questions at any point during the webinar, you can put them into the question box that is circled or raise your hand. We have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, and at that time, Brent can answer the questions that you have put into the box. Remember, we have the panel on the right hand of the screen. If, however, you like to ask to unmute you so that you can speak the question, just raise your hand and Caroline and I will get to you during the Q&A period. You can also share info in the chat box during the webinar if you like. Third and last, if you are having any technical difficulties, you can call the Go to Help line at the number on the screen. With that, I pass you along to Brent to introduce himself and share the great work that the Farm to School team is doing at Lord Roberts. Hi, Brent. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your time and knowledge, and welcome to the webinar. What is yours?
Pleasure to be here. Can you just confirm, can you see, you guys can see my screen well? You're seeing my slides?
Yep, I can see your slides.
Yeah, perfect. Just why I always want to double check that. So thanks everybody. It's fun to be here and share with you a little bit about what's happening at Lord Roberts, and then to get your perspective and any questions or comments that you guys have on the work that you're doing as it relates to some of the story that is unfolding here. I'll introduce myself a little bit and tell you about the role that I play here at the school and some unique things that are happening, and I think some ideas that maybe might spark some interest elsewhere as well. So just quickly about me, I've been a teacher on and off for about 4 years. So I actually started teaching 12 years ago and actually didn't stay in the classroom for that long. I eventually ran the garden program at Grandview Quinnipiac, hence the cute picture of me in what looks like a cornfield with some then kindergartners who would now be graduated, scary enough. I actually left teaching for a while and worked at both Grandview and then eventually Think and Eat Green at school at UBC. And then a couple years ago, realized I wanted to make my way back to the classroom. And this is my second year back at teaching at Lord Roberts, which I'll tell you about in a minute. And this year I've kind of entered into a new role, which I'll explain as well. So a little bit of context as well about Lord Roberts, because I think it, the place that we are in kind of dictates a lot of things in the ways that we work. As you can tell, it's a very old elementary school. It's in the west end of Vancouver, so a very dense neighborhood in Vancouver. It's by far the most diverse school that I've ever seen. And that is just a real strength for us here. So for example, the grade 3-4 class that I taught last year had 16 different first languages. So within 23 students, 16 different first languages. And students, I think we're at this year about 44 different languages across the school. So a really diverse student population. Have been in Canada for a ranging different amounts of times. But some of the conversations I was having with my classes today around culture and food traditions, just a huge diversity amongst the kids, and really represents a real strength. Also, kids, I think there's a couple townhouses in the neighborhood, but almost exclusively live in apartments. So in terms of access to outside and agriculture and all those things, we live in a beautiful neighborhood right by Stanley Park and English Bay, but it's unique in terms of its density that way. Creates just a unique context for the work we do here. A little bit on the history of the work at Roberts, and you're not meant to see the whole quote there, but this is an article from City Farmer from 1988. When the garden went in, original garden went in then, and it was unique in Vancouver at the time. I think really we have to remember gardens and school gardens have been around for many, many generations, but kind of in this era of school gardens and food education, Lord Roberts was a pioneer when I was just a wee lad. So I started here at the school, like I said, 1.5 years ago. And one of the first things I did, knowing that food was a major passion of mine, that I still wanted to bring my classroom, at that point was a grade 3-4 class. I worked with a couple other teachers to create a food literacy committee. And it's something I know other people have asked questions about in the past, and Claudia asked me to speak to a little bit, is we chose to, just given the way schools work and having the committee structures that report to the staff advisory committee and staff meetings, is by creating a committee, it allowed us to plan and get organized and create a vision for what we wanted to do, which was really important, and had support and involvement from my principal since the beginning, and quite a number of teachers. That also allowed us to be able to, when we needed to bring things, when it was relevant, when we needed to bring things back to staff meetings, we had an avenue into that and a regular opportunity to update and report. And to me, it's small, but I think significant, the opportunity just to legitimize the work. We have committees around, even things like social committees and social justice committees and sometimes green committees. But I think creating a food literacy committee helped us to create a kind of a broader vision for what we wanted to see at our school, as well as that kind of committee structure that allows us to kind of interact with the rest of school on a regular basis. So I thought that was an important piece for the work that we've done here. The next one, and this was originally, I think, just kind of, it's unique to Roberts and what we started, and this was something that actually was the new principal's idea, is we actually have time at our school, the last 20 minutes before lunch, the lunch break starts, teachers actually eat with their classes in kind of as part of the mindful eating initiative that we have. So part of that was born out of necessity in terms of just the size of our school and the size of the lunchroom, but also the decision to make eating happen as part of curricular time and begin to explore some of the connections that exist around that. And teachers have their prerogative to do that how they want to. Some are doing student speeches, some are just teaching kids how to share table talk while they eat. There's a lot of different things happening around mindful eating, specifically during that curricular time, that actually the Food Literacy Committee really helped to kind of support and drive here at Roberts. The other unique one, and this actually came out of conversation at the Food Literacy Committee, is I have now stepped into a role. Last year I was a classroom teacher, I said, for grade 3, grade 4. I have now stepped into a role doing prep. So last year our preps were quite different, but there was a bit of transition and also interest given my background in kind of food and health and agriculture education, was an interest in kind of exploring how we could do preps differently. And I actually did not realize this entirely until last year, is how schools do their prep is actually up to the school, right? And when we know typically that's French, PE, or music, but it doesn't have to be. And so we actually reorganized our prep schedule. So this year I started where I actually 4 days a week, I'm doing edible education as my prep, which is actually a title that I chose to come up with to kind of link it to education. I clearly have aligned it with the health education portion of physical and health education curriculum, and that's what I'm reporting to teachers on, but also I'm making connections across science and math and language arts and all the other areas that connect to growing and cooking and composting and eating and all the things that we get up to. But so over those 4 days, I actually work with 520 students. So it's a very, I'll say frantic schedule at times, but it's an awesome opportunity because I get to work with them every week, as well as finding ways to support teachers to embed some of the activities that we're doing in our garden, in the kitchen, in our lunches, back in their own activities. But that's something that's really opened up a lot of possibilities and supported student learning at our school. And I'll speak to that a little bit more. And I've thrown in some fun photos because why not? So we do a lot in seed catalogs, especially older kids, where we're doing a lot around knife skills. We do a lot of kind of healthy snacks and different meals with what we have time to do. We also, in terms of spaces that I use for teaching and try and change that up a little bit here. So here's actually a picture of my class, some pictures of my class last year, building some of our new garden beds. So we are really fortunate. We now have a very large garden. So we have 28 of these garden boxes. We added 18 new ones this year. So explicitly call that the garden classroom with my classes and with the whole school, so that they know this is a place we go outside to learn and not to play. These both went in, most of these went in kind of September of October this year. So we've just started kind of planting beyond the garlic that we were able to plant in the fall. The area that you see in the back of that photo on the right, there's now another fence, and then the picnic tables have returned. So that's the area we call the outdoor classroom. So now more and more often as the weather's getting nicer, we'll spend some time kind of around the kind of 2 amphitheaters of picnic tables. I might explain an activity, and then we'll spend time moving into the garden. So we have the garden classroom, our outdoor classroom, and then I'm actually in the multi-purpose room, which I with the kids have called the kitchen classroom, and that's where we'll also set up. So I have some of kind of the lunchroom picnic table set up in a U, and that is the space that I teach from, for better or for worse, because it's very different for kids. They come in and it's in a U shape, and it's very different, and some of them find that a little challenging, but I think we've gotten used to that. And I have a small kitchen behind me, as well as I've now created kind of full cooking sets. So I have hot plates, I have cutting boards, I have knives, and quite often, depending on the age of the kids, we'll get up to a cooking activity. With younger kids, I do a lot of it up front and just get them kind of participating in small tasks. So here's some kohlrabi slaw we made, our plant part salad, and then of course for Valentine's Day we needed roasted beet hummus with red carrots. I have become minorly obsessed with colors, so I love to get students excited about just the rainbow that exists in food and the benefits that has for your body. So hence the multicolored carrots and blends of everything else. And then just a huge opportunity and I'll get more to some of the kind of eating part that we're doing, but to link between edible education and some of the farm to school kind of more lunch activities that we're doing. So getting kids just familiar with different vegetables, whether that's roasting a squash for those kids that have never had a butternut squash. We do taste testing and voting. I get kids to vote on almost everything because it's one of the small ways that they can actually feel empowered. So when they vote on what we plant in the garden, that's what we plant in the garden. When they vote on what greens we have, that's more likely to be what we have there. So introducing them to pea shoots and arugula, which I've learned if you call it rocket, kids like it more, things like that. Making it fun and giving those connections to kids to try and taste different things. And I always say to kids, when you come to me in edible education, you never have to eat anything, but it's always an opportunity to. And if they want to try something, fantastic. And if they try it and they don't like it, I'm not going to be disappointed. If anything, I'm proud they tried something new. And it's approach. I have parents constantly approaching me and saying, "How did you get my kid to eat broccoli? Why is my kid excited? I don't even know what kohlrabi is." And I think there's a kind of positive peer pressure from me as well as from some of their classmates. And many kids will try things and discover that they like things that they never did before. And I think a big one too, and this is, I know these are kind of very busy slides, but I wanted to show this up here, is getting students involved. So as we've now kind of launched our first lunch, and I'll get to that, is getting students involved in almost everything. Like I said, we vote on what we plant in the garden. This was actually brainstorming around with a small group for a BC Green Games activity. But regardless, the idea was getting students to think through, what do we need to do if we actually want to create a lunch? what are all the things that go into that? What are the things around training and what's served and seasonal availability and dietary restrictions? And was just blown away. This was a great group of grade 4 to 7 students, a cross section of classes, just their thoughts on what they needed to do and how they can make it welcoming for students and what they wanted in the space and what they wanted for food, and kind of over a period of about actually 2 months kind of created this process, but really about getting student buy-in, not just around willing to eat things, but around what they wanted to see. And elementary students can do this. And I mean, obviously I guide them through it, but it was awesome to get them thinking around even just the cooking equipment they would need or what's available seasonally, and all the work we had done in the seed catalog, I think gives them a little bit of a sense of that. Another really big one is getting parents on board, right? Especially as we're moving towards these lunches, how do we communicate with parents? And these are just 2 pictures. There's a weekly school newsletter that I include an update in just so parents can know what their kids are up to. I've also realized Instagram is a really good one for my community, so that many times, I mean, this picture is a little bit of an older one. You know, if we kohlrabi or we make hummus, I put recipes up there. I put pictures so that parents can know what their kids are up to, and know what they could find in the grocery store, or a recipe they can make if they had never made kale chips or whatever it is, right? And then getting the pack involved, right? I have not seen $4,300, but this was something the parents were asking for to be able to support, especially the early phases of development of the garden and the cooking equipment and all these things that we need to be able to run the edible education program, and also just to get them invested in what their kids are doing at school.
Brent, I've asked someone has asked if you can make the screen a bit bigger. Is that possible? If you can kind of make the side one smaller? And
I have tried before. Oh, look at that. I can too. I did not know I could do that. So yeah, there you go.
Sweet, thanks a lot. Yeah,
no worries at all. But can you see that, Carolyn, now?
Yep, looks great.
Okay. Beyond that was just the idea of like, okay, so students are involved, parents are involved. Oftentimes, people doing food-related and food literacy work in their schools, it can be, even in a Keene school, a smaller group. So always having an eye on how to get the whole school community invested. Teachers, administrators, to kind of get a broad base of support. So just wanted to offer a couple of my reflections on this. One was around the formation of this food literacy committee, was the legitimacy and opportunity for staff to engage. We also have had, and we're going to continue to this, we've had one Pro-D Day, which had some kind of connections to both place-based learning and edible education. We also are planning a Pro-D Day where actually teachers are going to be cooking with some of the equipment that we're using in edible education, just so they can understand the cross-curricular connections. So using those times to be able to kind of build support for the work we do. Also, for me, it's about, yes, I work regularly with students, but wanting to get more of the school on board is providing different levels of opportunity for teachers to get involved with their classrooms, whether that's maps of garden beds and seeds that people actually can go out and plant, or it was also, for example, this project that I'm going to tell you about next with the lunch is working really closely with 3 teachers to kind of launch this and working closely with their students. So providing lots of different opportunities for people to plug in where they want to, whether it's setting up tables, whether it's cooking food. And then also, and I think most of us know this on this call, but for me, food literacy and access to healthy food is an end in and of itself. And it's a reason I do this work, but also helping people understand how food can be a means to transforming education, how food can make education more fun, more community-based, more experiential. And I think people that might not be interested in food per se, when they see the advantages that engaging food literacy education does, I think people can really come on board. And then last but not least, when we're doing food stuff, we need to feed people. So admittedly, this is my lunch from last Thursday. So I probably eat a little differently than most people, but I'll show you some pictures of what kids took, and it doesn't look all that different. So we've been planning with support of Farm to Cafeteria Canada, planning to kind of launch this farm and garden to school lunch program, and have been dreaming about how to do that with students involved in as much preparation of the food as possible. And we were able to do some soup lunches with a small group of kids. We've been doing these salads, and finding that this is the plant part salads on the right. The kids have been engaged in that. But really dreaming about how we can take that further and kind of imagining what a farm to school lunch program would look like with students involved. So actually with a lot of planning, but this last Thursday, we were able to launch what at this point, in partnership with Growing Chefs and Fresh Roots, we're calling Lunch Lab. Kind of the idea of kind of linking learning and access is how do we get students involved? So on the left there's actually one of my students' fathers is a farmer, and I know him from previous work, but also see him regularly at the farmers market. So we were able to get these carnival squash on the left that kids helped prep from a student's parent, getting kids involved in cabbage and carrots that we were able to get seasonally, and then talking about what that looks like. In this case, we did refried and black beans, partially because we were doing it for BC Green Games. So open up conversations both from the New Canada Food Guide, but also from environmentally around what does it mean to eat some less meat, and what are some delicious options that we can have. So it was really about how we can do that. It was also about getting students involved. So here is a video and 3 photos I am very proud of. This is not the prettiest in terms of, we've got a salad bar that we're getting set up, but this is the lunch line we did. And here's pictures of a student's lunch there. And then on the far right is actually a picture of my class after lunch. As we were still tidying up a little bit, there was a little bit of food left over. And this is the cleanup crew. So this is literally 2 girls' plates of what they finished by just eating the leftovers. And then I'm going to show you a very short video, because I love it, of some of the food that my class presented, or these classes prepared with me and the support of another dad who's a chef as well. So there you can see. Is that working, Caroline? So we did the design your own burritos and salad bar. So there you can see the whole wheat tortillas. You got cabbage, you got black and refried beans, corn, lettuce, guacamole, salsa, apples, which we bought from a local farm, kohlrabi, which kids love from the last activity. And kids just loaded up, and their plates many times looked like these kids here. And that was our pre-pilot, and we had about 85 kids eating in our lunchroom again, which was pretty fantastic. And just to say, could not do it without the support of Farm to Cafeteria Canada. They were able to kind of launch that, and moving forward are kind of exploring how we can work with 2 really important community organizations in our community, Fresh Roots and Growing Chefs, to kind of implement this kind of student chefs model of getting kids involved with obviously full adult support to create this lunch program. All the while linking learning. And then that being said, there's so much to learn, and how can we create new models that link learning with access to healthy food? So this is actually a picture on the left is a program, to me, in my mind, is the most advanced that I am really trying to emulate, and I'm excited to be going down and visiting over spring break, is a program called Food Lab in Davenport, California, where they've actually, for about 25 years, been getting grade 5 and 6 students to prepare the lunch as part of curriculum. So really excited to see that, and how do we build that into the culture of the school, where that's a leadership opportunity that probably grade 4s to 7s are able to be involved in during their time at Roberts. And how can we take it so that we're as much as possible is coming from the garden? And here's a couple photos of the garden that I used to run at Grandview. Here's the apples and carrots I was able to buy from local farmers for this last round. So we're moving from plastic bags at grocery stores, which also work and sometimes need to do that, but we can continue to have the color and access to food, and just the pride of students being able to know how to prepare these meals, to the pride of being able to serve their peers. And kids were lining up, the kids that were involved in preparation, to be able to serve the food. And it was beautiful to see how proud they were to be able to kind of serve their peers who were part of different action projects. With that, I'll throw up one of the last slides of a salad bar I did at Grandview many years ago, partially just because I love, those are kale flowers that we harvested from our garden. And this student is going for a little bit of soup, some kale, and a mountain of kale flowers. So I'll finish with that.
Okay, Brent, thank you so much. Was an amazing short presentation summarizing the amount of work and activity that you have and you have developed at the school. So my congratulations again to you. And I want to invite to the attendees to write down your question on the webinar panel on the right side of the screen. And in the meantime, I can formulate my question, because I already have some questions, so I can give some time to the attendees to to write down your question as well. You mentioned that the garden to you is a learn garden.
Yes.
You express you say to the students, this is a space to learn. Other schools that I know, they intentionally frame their garden as a place to play and to go around, and it's very integrated even to the community. Do you see some advantages and disadvantages in both models?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be both. I think for me, students are so used to going outside means recess and lunch and time to play and free time, which I'm a big fan of unstructured play for kids. But when they're with me and I want them to, put on the mind of a scientist and investigate whatever's going on in the garden, it's been helpful for me to emphasize that to kids, that this is about learning. Just the minute we step outside the door, usually that's when kids run to the playground. And I say, when you're with me, we might end up on the playground, but we're going to start by going to the garden, and we go in there calm, we go in there focused, and we go in there listening for the safety of them and the plants as well, with raised beds, right? So to me, that becomes important for students to be able to learn in that space. Just the nature and then layout of our garden is not integrated with the playground. And it's a busy neighborhood. Community is involved. Community is watching the space. Over the summer, we'll have parents involved. So it's not a matter of keeping community out of the garden. It's during school time, getting kids understanding that we go out there to learn and to grow food and to eat and to celebrate.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else has a question to share here?
Hey, Claudia, we can see some questions in the question box. Can you see them?
Oh, yes. Now, thank you so much. I was not rolling down. Sorry for that. Okay, so I will start taking a look. Okay, we have a question from Lauren Clark. Who is on the food literacy committee? Any key players?
So there's 6 or 7 teachers and our principal is who's currently on our food literacy committee as we've structured it. There are times for certain things moving forward where we'll broaden that out and try and get parents involved. And I have a very close relationship with our parent community as well as our PAC. So whether that's part of it is, many of you know that work inside school, scheduling a meeting is almost impossible. So sometimes having a knowing enable you can do it during lunchtime just allows that to happen. And then some of the other planning that you need broader support and involvement from, we'll do it another time. But our food literacy committee meeting is teachers and principal.
Okay, thank you. Susan Roberts says, great job. Wow. Then
Thanks,
we have a question.
It's not a question though, Susan.
No, but it's a great comment, and I totally agree.
I just think she likes the name of my school. That's why she likes it.
Yeah, okay, good. Laura Lynn ask actually, how many kids eat lunch every time you make it? And more than just the class preparing, how do they pay for it and how much? So we have 3 questions actually.
Okay, so the pictures that I showed you were from our first pilot where it was the equivalent of 1 class preparing for 3 classes. So that was kind of our first one, and it was kind of this pilot just to figure out how to do it. In the future, moving forward, it will actually be a smaller group of students doing the preparation, because doing preparation with too many kids, it's actually almost harder than a smaller group. So we're going to be doing it with a smaller group. We're planning this year to feed 90 kids at a time. Part of it is just us figuring out the flow of even just getting kids through. The kitchen capacity we have, there's a couple small upgrades we're going to do. Our goal in September is to do similar twice a week, and we're thinking we could do up to 150 kids based on both the volume we can prepare and the amount of space we have. I was able to actually, through a collaborative inquiry grant from the Vancouver School Board, pay for this round. And we have some funding moving forward to be able to offer each kid to try it once this school year for free, And then we're still tweaking this a little bit, but probably what it will be, and we've had the PAC did a survey in the fall that said parents would be willing to, is those that can will pay $5 to be able to have a full hot portion and side salad bar. And those who can't, and we have some kids on a program where they are eating subsidized lunch, they will immediately be covered. So we're expecting to have about 40 kids who are currently on that program have it free, and those who can, and from when I continue to talk to parents, they seem willing and able to do that on the days, is that they will be able to do that. So they would be $5, because ultimately over the long term, we, in partnership with Fresh Roots and Growing Chefs, we do have some funding from the City of Vancouver as well that will help kind of do this, but is to be able to cover some of the coordination as well as the food costs to make it sustainable.
Okay. Yes, Balcao, hopefully I am pronouncing well the name, is also asking about the funding that you are already answered the question, but she also asked how much funding do you have?
I guess the first thing I will say, both in terms of just to help people think outside the box first on just funding, is one is that my role is paid for as a teacher. Right? So by thinking outside of the box in this prep position has allowed the school to be able to take on more because I can justify it as part of my curricular and teaching load. Okay. We also do have one of the bigger grants from Farm to Cafeteria Canada, which has allowed us to purchase equipment and expand some of the stuff in our garden. We have also been able to do some fundraising for our garden, and then fully encourage you. We are also partnering moving forward, we're partnering with Fresh Roots and Growing Chefs, and they've been able to access some additional funding from the City of Vancouver.
Okay, thank you. Lauren Clark is asking, when you prep for salad with a student, is it just you and one parent supervising teaching, or how many people?
So the idea is,
how many adults actually?
I do some of that with small amounts with myself, like with just me. The reality is when we're talking about the salad bar, there will be I have a couple parents that are really keen, and then ideally eventually there's actually going to be like a coordinator that will support me specifically when it's talking about the lunch portion. The reality is I can do a fair amount and I can manage students most of the time, but the minute obviously you have knives and cutting boards and other things out, it becomes a different type of management. But it's systems that you can establish with your classes that make it possible. But ultimately, there needs to be others involved, whether that's 2 or 3 more.
Okay, thank you. We have 3 more minutes for more questions, so please write down your questions. And in the meantime, I will ask you another question. As a regional lead for BC, I know that some schools have issues maintaining the gardens during the summer break. We saw that a lot of beds were already installed in your school. How you are prepared to administrate the garden during the summer?
Yeah, couple things. There's myself and a couple of teachers that I don't mind. I live close by. I will pop by periodically. That being said, I don't plan on watering the garden every day in summer. So there is an kind of out-of-school care program that is at the school. We also have some really keen parents. One of the models that I have kind of softly pitched to the PAC that I saw at a school down in Oakland, California, was they called it family farmers. They actually had a family agree to adopt the garden for a week. And for that week, it was going to be their job, outside of obviously their holidays, that they were going to take care of the garden, that they would get training support to be able to do that. So kind of that combination of a little bit of check-in from me, conversations with the out-of-school care program, as well as teen parents and community volunteers.
Okay, thank you. We have another question from Adi. What had to happen to start the mindful eating program and add extra 20 minutes added to lunchtime?
It was actually almost out of necessity, out of chaos. The reality that getting that many kids into the lunchroom, they were doing it in 2 batches. Our school has hit 600. So getting 300 kids at a time into the lunchroom, and logistically what that looked like, and knowing how much kids would actually eat with that much chaos going on, Eventually, with the principal's initiation and others said that this isn't working. Kids are not actually eating. They're not having the time outside that they need to have. So what can we do? And we had kind of ABC option. And ultimately, the one that came out and we voted on was the idea that we would do it during curricular time, but the commitment of the teachers was then to make it curricular, right? And when with the new curriculum and personal and social competencies and all the other things that you can link to eating together, that is the way that we move forward. But it was actually because how it was currently happening was not working. I mean, I'd say it's hit the news lately. Time to eat is not enough, right? So 20 minutes in the classroom with a smaller group under the supervision of the teacher, kids are finishing their food when the environment is right. But time is a big one. And it's one that as we move forward with our lunch program, we're going to figure out what that looks like.
Okay, yes, and actually the new Canada Food line is also suggesting and encouraging us to add quality to the time that we are eating, and to me that should happen at any place that we are eating, at home, schools, or everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that it was the last question, and it's already 3:51, so we are ending the webinar here. Do you want to say something before leaving?
I don't think so. Yeah, happy to share the work. It always feels a little awkward being the one on the talking end, but I'm sure you're all doing fantastic work yourselves, and I look forward to hearing more about it at the Farm to Cafeteria Conference as well as other times.
Right. Thank you so much, everybody, to join us. And I remind you that we will post the video of this webinar later, and I will send an email to everybody so you can access to this later and to share widely, hopefully. Yeah, that's all. And thank you, Caroline, also for supporting us from the technical staff. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice week. Bye.